Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be turning a 6x6 paper pad into a full set of cards, but I'm doing it a little differently this time. I will be using all 4 of Jaded Blossom's card layer dies. They have set 1, 2, and they also have the reverse version, so this is version B of those same designs. Here I'll show you the difference between the original version and version B. So this is die number 1. You can see how it's just a reverse image. Now for some of the pieces it doesn't make a difference which die you would use, you'll still get that same result, but for those large triangles you'll have a different direction. Now for die 2, all of the pieces will be different since that angle will be a different direction. So I'll flip over the dies and you can see what they look like. It's one large die. You just put it on top of your 6x6 paper, run it through your die cut machine, and you'll end up with all those different pieces. And I love how they have the faux stitching along the outside edge. The paper collection I'll be using is by Sunny Studio. This is their Colorful Autumn collection. And it's an older collection from 2019, but it's beautiful. I love the colors and designs in this collection. Now there are 2 different patterns that I won't be using at all. I'll be using the opposite side. So that one large wreath, and there's also one with a border. It just won't work well with that card layer die. So instead I'm using that opposite side. So these colors are gorgeous. Lots of jewel tones mixed in with those autumn colors. And half of this paper collection has muted or tone-on-tone patterns mixed in with those busier designs. So it really is the perfect mix for using the card layer dies. So look at all those beautiful vibrant colors. I'm so excited to use this paper collection. And I will have links in the description box if you are interested in any of the products I use in this video. As with all my 6x6 videos, I went through my cardstock stash and pulled out several different coordinating colors. There's all these beautiful bright colors, but I end up mostly using the dark brown for my matted layers. And for the background of the cards, I'll be using a lot of the craft color cardstock. I've gone ahead and cut out all of the papers using the card layer dies, and this is all that's left over. Just this little thin frame. Of course, they're all stuck together. So the dies are just slightly smaller than the 6x6 size, so it fits perfectly when you're using a 6x6 paper pad. Before cutting up the papers, I sorted them out into 4 different piles. So with each die, I had 6 different pattern papers. Once all of the pieces were cut out, I put them inside an envelope just so they're all nice and organized. I'll pull out the pieces from one of the envelopes, and this is using card layer die 2 version B. I'll show just one set of the die cut pieces using this yellow leaf tone-on-tone pattern paper. So this die cuts out, I believe it's 6 pieces. If you have direction specific pattern paper, like this yellow pattern paper has little hearts, and of course I'm showing most of them upside down, but make sure you're cutting them the direction you want to use them. Now for several of the pattern papers, it didn't matter which direction I cut out those pieces. So here are all of the pieces. I have them in 4 nice piles with all the different dies. So you can see these trees at the bottom, the sunflowers, they are direction specific. So I chose to use the version 1 for both of those. Now there are a couple pieces, they may be upside down, so you need to modify your card design unless you just don't mind the pattern paper being upside down. Now for the die 2, I also have some direction specific pattern paper, so I'll just be modifying my card design as I go to make sure most of the pieces aren't upside down. With original card layer die 1 and version B, you do get these teeny tiny triangles. Now you could keep those and use them on the card, or you could just toss those in the recycle. I do end up using a few of them, but out of the whole paper collection, that's all I have left over, and then also that thin frame. I've sorted through all of the pieces and I have 10 different card designs to show using the card layer dies. So this is card design number 1, and I'll be making 6 different cards. I'll only show the assembly of 1. For some of the cards, I use 2 different pattern papers for that large piece, and then for others, I use the same pattern paper. For that very last card, I will be adding 2 of those diagonal strips, simply because I ended up with 1 extra after I sorted out all the cards. So I figured I would just add 2 on one of the cards. For this first card, I'm using 2 different pattern papers. I love this pattern paper with the acorns. It's one of my favorites. Adhering these onto some dark brown cardstock, and I am using liquid adhesive to adhere most of the pieces since they do have that stitch detail along the outside edge. I find using liquid adhesive helps all those edges lay flat. Now there is a gap between those first 2 die cut pieces. I'll add a scrap piece of cardstock in that little gap. I'll put liquid adhesive on the back of this diagonal strip. And I use some of the brown cardstock for a few of the pieces since I didn't have a pattern that really worked well with these other 2 pattern papers. I also cut out several stitched oval and stitched circle die cuts, and I'll be putting the images and sentiments on those. I'll be using the fall dies, and this is by Jaded Blossom. I love this set. It has so many great fall images. For this first card, I'm assembling a wooden barrel. I used some craft cardstock for the main portion and then some dark brown cardstock for these little rings that go around the barrel. Just adhering them together using some liquid adhesive. Then I'll fill up my barrel with a few fall leaves. First, I'll add a strip of double-sided tape to the very top of the barrel on the back side. Remove the release paper, and then I can attach my 3 leaves behind. And I wanted to have colors that coordinate with the pattern paper. So I have 2 in a pink color and 1 in brown. And then I decided to pop this up using some thin foam squares. Make sure to get good coverage. I can remove the release paper and adhere it to the center of that oval. And this image really fills up that oval. I love these colors together. For this sentiment, I've already stamped it out. This is Autumn Greetings, and it's using Jaded Blossom's Harvest Signs stamp set. I stamped it using some brown ink, and I'll just cut some fishtails on both ends. And I'll also pop up the sentiment using some more of those thin foam squares. I'll adhere the sentiment underneath the oval, trying to center it on the card. For embellishments on my cards, I decided to dig through some of my used bling. So I have several different brands of bling. Using some sparkly epoxy dots for this card in pink. So there's my finished card, and here are the other 5 I made using the same card design. And you can see the difference between the original and the version B dies. They're just a mirror image. For this first set of cards, I only use the Card Layer Die 2 and the Card Layer Die 2 version B. I love this design. It's very quick and simple. Just need some pretty pattern paper, add an image in the center, and your card is finished. Now moving on to card design number 2. I've already cut out all of the pieces and laid them loosely on a card base. I'll just show you them really quickly. Again, I did cut out those stitched ovals and circles. For one of the cards, I'll be making a horizontal card simply because that banner with the tree, I didn't want it to go sideways. For this set of cards, I used the original Card Layer Die 1 and also version B. I have some craft cardstock for the background, putting ATG tape on the back, layering this piece on some of the dark brown cardstock. The background layer is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches, and the cardstock layer is an additional 1/8 of an inch. So 4 1/8 of an inch by 5 3/8 of an inch. And all of my cards in this video are American Standard A2 size. I decided to just use the sunflower paper for this card. Glued both of those pieces down, leaving a little bit of a gap between the 2 triangles. I'll put my card front onto a card base. And the sunflower paper is direction specific, so I wanted to make sure not to adhere it upside down. I'll add a large yellow banner on the top portion of the card, just gluing that down with some liquid adhesive. Then the oval will go toward the left on top of that yellow banner. I decided to add a scrap piece of cardstock on the lower portion of the oval where it goes off of that yellow banner, just to keep it nice and level. Part of the prep for this video, I cut out a ton of leaf die cuts, and this is using the Fall Dies by Jaded Blossom. I used several different colors of cardstock that coordinate with the pattern paper. For this card, I have a brown, an orange, and a yellow leaf, and I'll just adhere those onto the oval. I've already stamped out the sentiment. This is thankful, and I decided to stamp it on the same craft colored cardstock. I will cut the right side at an angle just for some extra interest, and then I'll add some of the scrap cardstock pieces on the right side where it goes off of the oval. And for this card, I do need 2 pieces of that cardstock. I'm asked all the time how I prep my 6x6 videos, and I really don't do a lot of prep. Other than selecting, coordinating cardstock, maybe a couple sketches, stamp sets, and dies, that's really about it. Now for this video, I did a lot of prep. I had all of the cards designed before I even started recording. So this did take me quite a bit of time to do the full recording and editing, voiceover to get it all finished. But for someone following this video, you don't have to do all the work to figure out those card designs since I've already done it for you. So there's my finished card, just added a few epoxy dots. And again, I did make 6. I have the one card that's horizontal and the rest are all vertical. This is the first video I made using all 4 of the card layer dies, but I do have 2 other videos out where I used 2 of the card layer dies. I'll link to both of those videos at the end of this video if you're watching it on YouTube, and I'll also add links in the description box if you're watching it over on Rumble. So now moving on to card design number 3. Again, have all of those pieces laid out so I have an idea of what the card design will look like. For the rest of the cards, I'll be mixing all 4 of those dies for each of the card designs. And I don't remember which piece goes with which design, especially those smaller pieces. I have some more craft cardstock for the background. I'll add this green grid piece on the bottom portion. I'll put some ATG tape on the back of this panel, layer it on some dark brown cardstock, and I'll put my card front onto a card base. And all of the cards in this video, I do leave that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. Now I have a couple of these banner pieces. One's a little shorter and wider, and then this longer, narrow piece. Using some of the plaid paper, and then some of the leaf tone-on-tone paper. Just layering those 2 pieces together. Then I'll add a stitch circle die cut, and I did cut this out of some white shimmer cardstock. For the images on this card, I've already assembled these pieces just to save on time. Decided to put some apples in the barrel. Stamped out the happy fall sentiment, and I'll adhere it to the lower right-hand corner. Then to finish off this card, I'll add a few of the glitter enamel dots, this time in green. Put 2 of them in the upper left-hand corner and 1 to the right of that barrel of apples. So there's my finished card, and here are the other 5 using basically this same card design. Some of the pieces are just flip-flopped. I'm only sharing a few of the card pictures on this video, but if you head over to my blog, I have pictures of every single card. I photographed them by card design, so if you do follow this tutorial, you'll be able to see exactly where every single die cut piece was used on my cards. Now moving on to card design number 4. Have all of those die cut pieces already cut out, using some solid cardstock for a few of the pieces. So the design's fairly similar to the previous card. This time I'm adding that diagonal strip and also the banner. The biggest challenge for me in this video was trying to make sure to have most of those pattern paper pieces going the correct direction. There are a few small banners that are sideways or upside down, but for the most part, I have them all facing correctly. For this card, I'm using the craft cardstock for the background, adding the panel of blue grid paper and also one of the yellow leaf strips. Put some ATG tape on the back, layer this piece on some dark brown cardstock. So you can see I'm using a lot of the dark brown cardstock. I use more of the other colors for the die cut pieces. Then I'll add the leaf banner. Before adhering it in place, I am adding some scrap cardstock just on that upper portion where it goes off of that yellow strip. Put some liquid adhesive on the back and adhere this to the card more to the left side. Then I'll add a stitch circle die cut. Use some more of that white shimmer cardstock. Just adhere that in place using some liquid adhesive. For the sentiment on this card, I decided to stamp it directly onto that circle die cut. Probably should have done it before I adhered it to the card, but this works fine. I'm putting it in my mini MISTI just to make sure I can get a solid impression. Trying to make sure to get it nice and straight. I'm using some dark chocolate ink. This is made by scrapbook.com, and I'll ink it up twice. And since I did stamp on shimmer cardstock, I let my card sit for just a few minutes to make sure the ink doesn't smudge. I could have also used some clear embossing powder. I'll add a couple of the leaf die cuts, one in orange and one in green, just adhering them above the word thanks. Then to finish off the card, I'll add some bling, and this is from Honeybee Stamps. I love this size, it's perfect, it's nice and small. Most of my designs in this video are fairly simple. I really wanted to focus on the different designs you can create using Jaded Blossom's card layer dies. So there's my finished card, and here are the other 5 I made that are similar, just mixed and matched some of those die cuts. Now for this card I use the sunflowers, and these are part of the fall banner die set. I love the sunflowers. And the pumpkins are also from that die set. There are so many beautiful pattern papers in this collection. I love the acorns. The sunflowers are probably my second favorite, and all of the leaf patterns are beautiful. So now let's move on to card design number 5. I love this design. This is one of my favorites. So I have the 2 large triangles, and I'm adding a couple of the smaller banners. For some of the cards, I'll have the end of the banner on the left side of the card. For some of the other cards, I'll have it on the right side. Again, just depending on the direction of the pattern papers. Also be adding that large oval die cut. So for this card, I'm using the fun pumpkin paper. Also have some tone-on-tone leaf paper for the lower triangle. I'll adhere both of these onto the craft cardstock. I am leaving about 1/4 of an inch border around the triangles. For this video, I tried to use different card designs than in my previous videos using the card layer dies, and I do have a Pinterest board with all of those cards. I think I repeated at least 1, maybe 2 of those designs. So I'll layer this panel on the dark brown cardstock and adhere my card front onto a card base. For the 2 banners, I'll adhere the wider banner first. I'll just glue these down using some liquid adhesive. I don't have the end going all the way to the edge. I decided to leave a little bit of a gap of that craft cardstock around it. And then for the smaller banner, I shifted it off to the right just slightly. Next, I'll adhere the white oval die cut. First, I'll add some of those scrap cardstock pieces underneath where it goes off of the 2 banners. I want to leave a wide enough gap to go over those 2 banners. So put more liquid adhesive on the back and adhere it to the card more toward the left. For the images on this card, I'll be adding 2 pumpkins, and these are from the fall die set. I used some orange cardstock for the main portion of the pumpkin, brown cardstock for the stem, and I'll just adhere those 2 pieces together. I like that the stem piece fits on both of the pumpkins. I've already stamped out the sentiment, Happy Fall. I'll cut the right side at an angle and adhere it to the lower right side of the oval. But first I'll add those scrap pieces of cardstock just on the right side where it goes off of that white oval. Then I'll adhere it in place using some liquid adhesive. Wanted to attach the sentiment first, then I could get the placement of my pumpkins correct. So now I can add my pumpkins, and I decided not to pop them up. I'm just going to glue them down directly. Add the tall pumpkin on the left and the smaller pumpkin on top of it. I felt the lower portion of the card needed something, so I used Jaded Blossom's banner dies, cut out this fun wavy border, put some double-sided tape on the back, and I'll just adhere it to the lower portion of the card. To finish off the card, I'll add a few of the gem stickers from Honeybee Stamps, using just the orange color. Put 2 in the upper left-hand corner and 1 above the sentiment. So there is my finished card, and here are the other 5 I made using the similar design. I don't have any 2 cards that are exactly the same in this video, and that's rare for me when I use a 6x6 paper pad. This card design is perfect for featuring several different pattern papers, but you could also use solid cardstock for those small banners. Now moving on to card design number 6. For this card design, I'll only be making 3 cards. I have that one die cut piece that looks like a pocket, but for the pumpkin and the sunflower paper, I didn't want them to be upside down, so I am flipping it over. With just those 3 small die cut pieces, now you'll see more of the background paper. So I wanted to add a little extra interest. I used an embossing folder from Sunny Studio. This is their Quilted Hearts embossing folder. I think it adds a beautiful background. I'll adhere my card front onto a card base. Then the first die cut piece I'll attach to the card is the banner. So this is that green leaf tone-on-tone pattern paper. I'll adhere it using some liquid adhesive. Since I'm attaching that banner onto a textured background, I decided to put my acrylic block on top for some added weight while that glue adheres. Next, I'll attach the blue banner, and then the sunflower piece will go right on top. I decided to pop up that sunflower piece with some of the foam squares. So just remove the release paper and adhere it on top of that blue banner. Then I'll add a stitch strip border underneath the sunflower paper, and I used Jaded Blossom's border dies for that piece. I put some double-sided tape on the back, remove the release paper, and I'll attach it to the card. For this sentiment, I'll be adding the word thank you, and I used Jaded Blossom's basic word dies. So it has the die for the word and also the outline. Cut out the word using some yellow cardstock and then just layering it on some brown cardstock. I already attached the word thank. Then I'll adhere those onto that sunflower piece. I thought it'd be fun to put them at an angle. For finishing touches on the card, I'll add a few of the sunflowers, and I've already attached these. And I cut these out from Jaded Blossom's fall banner dies. I'm trying to decide where to put that third sunflower. And I'll also pop these up using some of the thin foam squares. Put 2 of the sunflowers in the lower left-hand corner, and then 1 to the right of the sentiment. I was thinking about adding a small banner in the upper right-hand corner, but instead I pulled out some of those tiny triangles that were left over, and I'll put 2 of them in the upper right-hand corner. I have 1 of each size. So I have the blue first, and then I'll add the small green one on top. And this is the only card design where I use those small triangles. And one final finishing touch, I'll add a few of the gold gem stickers. Just trying to figure out placement for them. And there is my finished card, and here are the other 2 I made using that same card design. I used the same thank you sentiment, but instead of the sunflowers, I used a couple of the fall leaf die cuts. I really like the look of the Quilted Hearts embossing folder. I think I need to use that more often. For the next card design, I have some of the pocket die cut pieces and also some of the thin banners. I end up not using the thin banners, and I'll move them onto another card design later in the video. I'll be making 4 cards using this design, And for the background, I'll also use an embossing folder. And this is a leaf embossing folder from Echo Park. It was released several years ago and I believe it's been discontinued. But I will add a link to a similar embossing folder if I can find one. First, I'll adhere the 2 pocket die cut pieces to the center of the card panel, leaving a little gap between the 2 pieces. Then I'll layer this panel on the dark brown cardstock. I like to add a little extra adhesive when I have my background embossed, just to make sure it's going to stay attached. I'll put my card front onto a card base, again leaving that 1/8 of an inch of the white card base showing. I stamped out the sentiment Happy Fall on a stitched oval die cut. Also put some thin foam squares on the back and I'll adhere it to the right side of the card. Next, I'll add this fun leaf banner die cut to the top portion of the card, and this is from Jaded Blossom's Fall Banner die set. I did trim off a couple of the leaves since it was a little longer than the A2 size card. It's nice though because you could do it horizontal and it'll fit all the way across the card. I added a foam square underneath each of the leaves. Then I'll attach it to the card, flip over the card, and then just trim off the extra portion of that banner. I did add a drop of liquid adhesive underneath that top edge of the banner since it was sticking up a bit. I love Jaded Blossom's banner die sets. So they have the die for the banner and it also has all the dies for the pieces to fill in the images on the banner. So for this one, it has a full-size leaf that would cover up that brown. But this set also includes the smaller leaf die. So that's what I used to cut out the yellow and orange leaves. And I'm just gluing those in place with some liquid adhesive. And I love this stitch detail that goes down through the middle of that leaf. The small images are also perfect to use as embellishments on your cards. So I cut out 2 more of the little leaves and I'll adhere them to the lower right-hand corner underneath the sentiment. So again, 1 in yellow and 1 in orange. Then to finish off the card, I'll add some more of the glitter enamel dots using kind of a brownish color and it has that pretty green glitter in the center. So there's my finished card and here are the other 3 I made using the similar design. For 2 of the cards, I used the leaf banner. For 1, I used the sunflower banner, and the final card, I have some acorns. And all of those dies are included in the Jaded Blossom Fall Banner die set. I also used a glitter brush on the center of the sunflowers and the top of the acorns. So moving on to the next card design. So I have lots of the small die cut pieces. Kind of mixing and matching them to create several different cards. I used the Sunny Studio Quilted Hearts embossing folder for the background, so it has that extra detail. Put some ATG tape on the back and adhere this panel onto some dark brown cardstock. Then I'll put my card front onto a card base. For this card, I have 4 different die cut pieces. 2 of them are the leaf tone-on-tone pattern paper. One has lots of polka dots and the other is the colorful plaid design. I'll be adhering all of these in place using some liquid adhesive, except for the larger blue panel. I'll pop that up using some foam dimension. I'm basically creating a little cluster of die cut pieces in the lower left-hand corner. Just layering them all together, making sure you can still see a portion of each of those pieces. So now I'll attach the blue and I've already put those foam squares on the back side. At this point in the video, all I have left are these small die cut pieces. Next, I'll add the sentiment and a couple of the leaf images. I did put a foam square on the top of the brown leaf, but then the rest I just adhered using some liquid adhesive. So I'll put the 2 leaves down first and then I'll add the word thanks. I put some foam squares on the very outside edge of the word thanks where it goes off of that blue die cut piece, just to make sure those ends don't droop down. Then to finish up the card, I'll add a few of the gem stickers, 2 in the upper right hand corner and 1 next to the sentiment. This card design does have a lot of extra white space, but I think it's a nice balance. You don't always have to fill up the full front of your card. I made a total of 6 cards using a similar card design. They're not all exactly the same. For that last card, I shifted all the elements in the upper left-hand corner and added a border die at the bottom. And I like how that one turned out. It also has an extra banner underneath that larger die cut piece. So here is currently all of the die cut pieces I have left over, just enough for 2 more cards. So for card design number 9, I have 3 of the diagonal strips. I'll just adhere those onto some of the craft cardstock. I also have 1 of the pocket die cut pieces. I have the acorn, and then I'll add the green grid and then the colorful plaid. Now part of 2 of those diagonal strips do go off of the edge of that background panel, but that's okay. So I'll just flip it over, use my scissors, and trim off the extra. I just want to make sure that I get them straight and all the way to the edge. So it's just the very tip of each of those banners. I'll put some ATG tape on the back and layer this piece onto the dark brown cardstock. I'll put my card front onto a card base. Since I have that 1 pocket die cut piece, I won't be using any of the ovals or circles. I'll use that pocket to hold my sentiment and the images. And I decided to pop it up using some of the thin foam squares. I was happy that the back side of the 2 pattern papers I didn't use had a nice tone-on-tone pattern. So I'll just adhere that to the center of the card. Then I'll add 3 of the leaf die cuts. And I will pop up the top portion of each of those leaves. I'll put liquid adhesive on the bottom and adhere them to the center of that pocket. It would be cute to have the leaves coming out of the pocket, but I think they'll show more putting them on top. And I'll add a sentiment on top of the bottom portion of the leaves, and I'll also pop that up using some thin foam squares. I trimmed down the sentiment enough so you could still see a little bit of that blue pocket on the outside edges. Then to finish up the card, I'll add a few of the gem stickers. Put 2 in the upper right-hand corner and 1 underneath the sentiment toward the left. I'm trying to figure out where to put that 3rd gem sticker. And there is my finished card. I really like this design. I think that would be fun to do with some solid cardstock in the background, and then also add that pocket with the image and sentiment on top. Now moving on to card design number 10, and this is my final card. Here are all the die cut pieces I have left over. It's all the same banner, and these are from the set 2 original and also version B. So you can see they have the opposite angle. And I'm just adhering them across the back of the card. I love that I can fit 7 of the banners on this background panel. And this panel is 5¼ inches by 4 inches. As I'm adhering these to the background, I don't really have a specific pattern. I tried to mix up some of the colors. I'm mixing up the different die cut pieces so that angle at the bottom of the banner is different. I'm also shifting them up and down so they're not going all the way straight across the card. I think it just adds some extra interest. So there is the very final banner, and there is just a teeny tiny sliver along the edge. I was trying to trim it off, but it's so small it really doesn't make a difference. So I'll put some ATG tape on the back, adhere this panel on the dark brown cardstock, put my card front onto a card base. I love having card designs where I can feature lots of the pattern paper from one collection. And the colors in this collection are so fun. I'll add a stitched oval die cut to the center. But first I'll put a stitched border die across the background. And I already have some double-sided tape on the back. I'll just trim off the extra. I'll be adding some of the apple die cut pieces. But first I'll stamp the sentiment onto the oval. I'll use my mini MISTI to stamp the sentiment to make sure I get a nice solid impression. I am stamping on some Shimmer cardstock. I have the Harvest Signs stamp set from Jaded Blossom, and I love this sentiment. It has apples, 25 cents. I think that's really fun. I'll ink up the sentiment twice, and I'm using the dark chocolate color from scrapbook.com. It's a really nice brown ink color. I'll be popping up the oval using some of the thin squares. I flipped it over, I'm placing it on top of the card, then I'll place all of the foam dimension above and below where that thin strip border die cut is. I want to leave that little gap for the stitched border die cut, that way there isn't an extra bump on the top of the oval. So I'll remove all of the release paper and adhere the oval onto the card. Trying to make sure to get that sentiment nice and straight. And I have several apple die cuts. I pulled out 5, but I end up only using 3 of them. I'll just adhere those down using some liquid adhesive. I decided to have the 2 green apples on the outside and that pinkish red apple in the center. I'm just gluing them down using some liquid adhesive. Then to finish up the card, I'll add some pink glitter enamel dots. Put 2 of them in the upper left-hand corner and 1 to the right of the sentiment. The enamel dots do have adhesive on the back, but I'm adding a drop of liquid adhesive as well, just to make sure they won't fall off. And there is my finished card, the very final card using Sunny Studios Colorful Autumn 6x6 paper pad. I love how this card turned out. But do let me know which card is your favorite. So here is all that's left over from the paper pad. I have those frames, and I still have several of these teeny tiny triangles. I never keep any pattern paper scraps that are this small, but since this is exactly what's left over from using the card layer dies, I wanted to show how little waste there really is. In addition to the paper pad, I also used 17 sheets of 8.5 by 11 and 15 sheets of 12 by 12 solid colored cardstock, and that doesn't include the cardstock for my card bases. I made a total of 45 cards using Sunny Studios Colorful Autumn 6x6 paper pad along with the 4 Jaded Blossom Card Layer dies. I had so much fun making this set of cards. I love the beautiful pattern paper, and the card layer dies really make it so easy. I do have links provided in the description box if you are interested in any of the products I used in this video. These are affiliate links. I do earn a small commission at no additional cost to you when you make a purchase using those links. And if you want to check out my other videos where I use the Jaded Blossom Card Layer dies, I will post them here at the end of the video. And also down in the description box if you're watching this over on Rumble. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.